But love takes work. And real love, I think, is worth living, but it takes work. It takes a lot of work. And the work is in this. This is how you do it. Let me check my notes. I think when both people are concentrated on this concept, but it's really important, both people. Usually it's one person, I think, that's unhappy with the relationship, and one person that just sort of doesn't care. When both people are focused on this, it's really pretty amazing what kind of relationship you can live. And so my previous relationship of 13 years, I've come to realize was a very toxic relationship in a lot of ways. And unfortunately, it's as much my fault or more my fault than it was hers, because I didn't take the time to understand what her needs really were and to communicate that. And I can tell you, you really don't want to be in a situation with where you don't understand this, and you really don't want to be in a situation where you're with someone who refuses to do this. And I think on the other side of it, if both of you are working towards this, it's pretty great. It's like pretty crazy how happy you can be in a relationship. And when someone that you love is specifically going out of their way to just make your life better. So I mentioned that like acts of service is a really important thing to me, right? And I will come home and like all my clothes will be done. The whole house will be clean. Like my certain things will just be in order, or dinner will be ready, or like my life gets actually easier because my girlfriend wants to do things for me that improve my life. And then I'll definitely make sure to take like at least an hour and play Overcooked, or talk to her, make eye contact, not be on my phone. And then we both go to bed like, wow, this is a great relationship. And that happens every day, right? There's more to it than that, but I'm just like, what I'm trying to exemplify is like, if you figure this out, it's like you unlock the key to like, it's like you unlock the key to like what should be, what you feel like love should be the entire time. And then like with your family and your friends, if you identify like what these things are, you start to realize that like your friends are really big on like words of affirmation, and you start to apply this in the workplace. So you start to like tell them like compliments or things like that. Maybe you realize that like this sort of like sister or brother that you've had that you're kind of like estranged to, and you've never really managed to connect to, might just have different needs. And you identify those, and then you start to apply them. You see your relationships do like a 180, and it's like so fast. It's like crazy how fast it is. In really long-term relationships, sometimes it's not. And Gary Chapman talks about that, where like, and particularly I think in relationships where the other person is like kind of resistant, you may have to be the one that like takes charge and does this a lot until it improves. But like in a small amount of effort can actually make a huge difference. Okay. So before I open it up, I suspect that a lot of people will write this off. And that's okay. But what I would say is like, it's totally cool for you to write this off now. And later, just remember the book. And later in your life, it'll become relevant. It's like that old TV trope of like the fortune teller. And it's like, you will have to fix your relationship someday. And then you're like, whatever, old lady that has a crystal ball that I don't care about. And then you'll walk away. And like 10 years later, you'll realize that they're right. I'm the old lady today. I'm telling you, If you take the time to understand this right now, it'll improve your life. If you take the time, but if you don't, you'll have to come back to it at some point. Everybody will have a relationship that they'll have to address if you want to have a long-term relationship. And in general, I think that having long-term relationships with a woman or a guy that you can trust, that you can believe in, that believes in you, that will understand the things that really matter to you is much more valuable than shotgunning Tinder for the next 10 years of your life. And that there's a sort of inherent soullessness in that is not great. Okay. What else? Is there anything I want to say before I open this up to discussion? I've gotten a lot out of this book. I really have. Like, my now girlfriend introduced it to me, and she is a person who puts a lot of effort and time into researching and understanding what makes her relationships work. I've never been with somebody like that. And it's really cool because for her to take the time to understand the relationship, which is actually like a really huge part of your life. It's a gigantic part of your life. I do this is a whole nother subject, but I track all my time. I track every hour that I spend doing anything because I want to think about, this makes more sense in the context that I'm an executive. So it makes like I have like the time that I spend needs to be effective if I want to accomplish the things in my life that I want to accomplish. Last week, I spent 22 concentrated hours with my girlfriend. That's over a part-time job, right? The amount of time that you will spend with your significant other and with your family and with the people to which this is relevant is astronomical. So you better be in a position where you really understand their needs. And as importantly, I can't stress this enough, they understand your needs. As you can't be the only one doing this. And this is a big lesson that I have from previous relationships, is that I was the only one doing this. And when I've come across a person who actually cares about doing this also, and both people are geared towards self-improvement, the results are really amazing. It's a totally different type of relationship, totally different thing than I thought was possible. And I think that if you start to talk to your close relationships about this concept and you get people on board with it, it'll really, really help your life. Because again, such a massive amount of time and effort and energy will go into your significant other and your relationship and your family. So why not make that time really something that you get a lot out of and that you enjoy? It isn't miserable for you like it is for so many hundreds of thousands of millions of people. And you know what? Like, it turns out that you'll enjoy it too. So quality time, like, it's not a very big deal to me, like I mentioned before, but you know what? I really enjoy those little overcooked sessions or the little talks that we have, or I actually end up enjoying them because I see that she enjoys them and I legitimately care about her, right? So I see her getting a lot out of it too. Physical touch is not a big deal to me. It's a really big deal to her. I learned to enjoy it a lot, right? Like it becomes a good thing. And I also know that there are people that I would not jive well with. Like, so if like receiving gifts is not high on her list, I don't feel like I have to give her a bunch of stuff to win her affection. I wouldn't really want a girl that I would have to do that for. So that helps me identify the kind of people I don't want to date. But quality time is great because it helps teach me, which is her primary love language. It helps teach me to just elevate my life in that way, and also like get me out of the house or not, or just like do things that are, focused. That said, it is a challenge for me. I don't like doing it. So I have to, but once I'm in the process of doing it, I often do. Helps grow me as a person. Any questions before we open up to talking about things? If you really seriously don't enjoy it, then it's probably a good sign that the relationship might not work out. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. What if you have more than two for yourself? Well, that's a great question, Exver. Everybody has all five. Everybody needs all five, but they're in degrees of importance. So if you wanted to do like a 1 to 10 scale, right? Maybe like on words of affirmation, you're like, I'm like an 8 or a 9. And then like physical touch is like a 4 or a 5. And then like receiving gifts is like literally like a 1 or a 2. I just don't need it. Quality time is like maybe like a 3 or a 4. And then acts of service is like a 7 or an 8, right? And everybody will like, and again, this is why I encourage people to actually do the tests, because when you figure out these values, and you figure out the values of your SO, it's not that like if somebody sends me a gift or something, or I receive a gift, that's great. I do appreciate it, but it's not something that I would appreciate as much as someone like sending like a nice comment to me or something like that, right? Yeah. So everybody has. You can just like tally it up. One thing that came up in the X in terms of quality of time was that we were spending lots of time together, but the quality of it wasn't really there. We were sleeping a lot than when we could have gone out. Gifts are nice because it tells someone that you were thinking about them when you weren't with them. So it sounds like you are a person who values receiving gifts. So for the context of this book, you don't need to read. I mean, I encourage everybody to read the book. I just think that most people won't. So just grabbing these concepts and thinking about these two things, like, okay, number one, what do I think the most important thing is to my girlfriend or boyfriend? What is that? And then number two, how do I do more of that? If you just do those two things, your relationship is going to be like way better. If you want to take it a step forward from that, communicate that you're like, hi, I listened to this crazy streamer named Mylixia, and he put me on this book club. And I thought it was dumb, but I started reading the book, and it turns out it's about these like 5 love languages. I think it's really improve our relationship. What do you think about it? And like, what do you think? And like, here, take this test. The way my girlfriend did it for me actually was she didn't even give me the book first. She just sent me a test online. There was like, do your love languages. I thought it was completely stupid. I was like, okay, fine. And I'm really into her, so I was like, yeah, sure. And so I did it, and it had no meaning to me. But then I think she didn't know me as well. She didn't realize like the way to actually just communicate that to me was because I'm so obsessed with self-improvement. All you need to do is sit down and be like, listen, I think this has like a significant impact on your life and it'll make you better. And I was like, okay. And then I immediately read the book, right? And then understand these concepts and then like started to apply them. And I apply these concepts consciously every single day. Like if you take the time to have that conversation, I think it's really valuable. You probably won't be able to do that in the same context with like your employees, or you probably shouldn't, or employers, excuse me, or like people at work, or like people in your family or things like that. But you should like identify like what are the things that they seem to be really paying attention to, and then do those things and just see what happens. And that conscious effort will take you a long way in your relationships. Okay, so from here, I think, unless there are other questions, I will open up the discussion for the book. We'll see what people think. There's actually weird number of people in the book club chat. More than I expected. I guess I never expect that people will ever come out for this thing. But I guess they did. That's cool. All right.
How could you do this to me, man? Never had a girlfriend. Never, not in a million years.
Okay, so that guy's, no, that's not relevant. Okay, how you guys doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Cool.
Good.
Good.
Yeah.
Doing good.
Happy President's Day.
And to you. I never actually like, I never actually like celebrate it because it's just like, it's like the same type of day for streamers.
It's essentially just a bank holiday at this point.
For sure.
So, the 5 love languages. You guys actually read this book? You guys are here to discuss the...
Yeah, I finished it.
All right.
Half of it,
Pretty good.
I got
Awesome.
through the 5 languages, yeah.
Heck yeah, I'm so happy. Okay, and has anybody actually, like...
Oh, block for me, block! Block!
Gotten anything out of it?
Thank God.
I think having like it helps you understand yourself, which is that's been the main thing I got out of it since I'm not in a relationship with them.
Also not in a relationship, but I've been on a really big communication binge on just like learning how to better communicate with people, and this reaffirmed a lot of thoughts that I've been having. So it's been a really good read.
Better communication in terms of what?
Just in general, I realize that for me specifically, speaking with my family is really difficult because just the way that I process information and the way they process information is completely different. And so this book specifically has been helpful in identifying that sometimes I just need to stop and identify how they receive information and then work towards that, as opposed to cramming down my ways of communication down their throat.
Totally agree. Yeah, that it's one of the things that really surprised me when I read this book. So this book like was a really new idea for me, right? And one of the things that really surprised me was just like how different people are in terms of like how they respond to, I don't know how you describe it. Like you would think that everybody sort of you're only inside your own head. so like when you think about other people, you think that they have to think the way that you do, or this is how I think. Like I think that everybody thinks the way I do, but there's actually people that think completely differently than you do. And it's like, whoa, like, is it really that different? And then you talk to people, and it's like, it still surprises me that something like quality time is so important to my SO, right? And I wish I knew this in the context of, for people that don't have relationships, I wish I knew this in the context of my family earlier, way earlier. Because if I understood it, man, I would be so much further along in my relationship with my parents. Not that that's like bad or anything, but like even that would have been way better if I just understood, particularly like my mom, who is just a person who doesn't talk a lot. Like she doesn't like really communicate a lot. I now understand what is important to her, which is like acts of service and like quality time. And in just applying those things over the course of the last like 2 months, just ended up like calling more and taking time with her has been like a huge increase in our relationship. And that I just never understood that, right? For all the years that I was just talking to her like I thought she would appreciate, not realizing that people are so vastly different.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest benefits of this book, partly because of the way it's written. It frames everything from a relationship and specifically marriage, but applying these kind of values to other relationships in your life is one of the things I've really been trying to do. And it's key in that. Like I'm thinking about, like you said, a relationship with your parents, relationship with coworkers, in ways that you don't really tend to think about, and how you can best get through them.
Yeah, the book is written completely for marriages, and that's because like the context of this dude's work is like my feeling on it is like he's in like the South somewhere, and like he's like he's like dealing with like a ton of like broken relationships that are coming through, and where like these kind of like probably older like 40 to 50 plus people that have been married for a while and are trying to like solve through their problems. So the book uses like a lot of like really funny examples to people like us that are in like the Twitch TV culture that's like completely different, where it's like, well, my husband's always outside spending time with his tools and never has time for me, and it's like how is this relevant, right? But like, but it is. It's like you just have to take yourself outside of that to like how it is contextualized in our lives.
Yeah, it didn't actually really click with me fully until I realized this book was written in '95. It's written from a very like a male voice. Every example is like uses male pronouns, and it's my wife is she talks a lot, and the man doesn't want to listen, and so it's a very kind of stereotypical view.
Yeah, it's definitely not 2019 focused, but that's good.
I think
go ahead. Sorry.
No. That I was just going to say, I think people need to learn how to extract the nuggets of information that are there from the examples. Usually with books like that, I think you can look at what the person's trying to say and kind of put yourself in your own situation rather than spend like 3 minutes reading the example that you definitely know you're not going to connect to.
Yeah, a lot of people have trouble with that. Like, it feels like to me that like the majority of people will just look at it and be like, okay, Christian, check, pastor, check, like old relationships in the South, check, I'm out. Like, and then they won't really give the book a shot, or they'll be like, I don't have a significant other, so I can't give the book a shot. But when you really, God, I wish like the one thing I wish I could emphasize like how much of close relationships are going to be a massive part of everyone's life, right? Like we are a social species, and if we don't learn how to serve the needs of other people, Tony Robbins has this really cool thing that's sort of a corollary to this that I'd want to talk about at some time, and it's called the 6 human needs, and what they are is certainty, variety, significance, love and connection, growth and contribution. And someday I'll do a talk on this as well because it's outside the context of this. But it's the same type of concept, which is identifying that there are certain needs that people have. And once you figure out those needs, and you can, and I think like Biocomputer said, you can step outside of the context of yourself and realize that they have these different things that are important that apply to them. Your life starts to really take a different turn. And then people start to, like, why do people view other people as charismatic or as, if you ever like see a person, you're like, that person's like a really great person. Like that person like really makes me feel great. It's because they are in tune with giving these needs to other people. And sometimes they grow up that way and they grow up being that charismatic because they were put in that position at a young age. Oftentimes, I've met people where it's completely fabricated, and they're amazing people. One of the most awesome people I know is a guy named Day9, Sean. And Sean started off as like an introverted person and just didn't really want to talk to anybody. He was kind of like a gamer, and like literally built a profile for himself where he started learning comedy and started learning about the needs of like other people and applying them actively. And now whenever I sit at it, like I know I've known Sean for like a couple of years now, and whenever I sit with him at a table or and like he just commands the entire place. And there's so many people that have heard of Day9. They're like, I love that guy, right? Like that's the kind of person that you can be if you start to like consciously apply these concepts.
Yeah, it's crazy watching some of his really early dailies and comparing it to now.
Yeah.
It's night and day.
Yeah, it's so like this is sort of like part of a bigger, I guess, thing, which is like taking the time to consciously be aware of other people's needs and then improve upon them, especially the people that are closest to your life, and making that a form of active communication in your life. By active communication, I mean taking the time to like talk to the people that are significant in your life and ask them what's important to them, and then do that thing. And even that little change will make a huge difference.
In that regard, I think the words of affirmation is really something that a lot of people should focus on, just because of how that encourages positive change. I know in relationships that I've struggled with in the past, including a lot of familial ones, just taking that slight change has actually improved them drastically. And I've had family members like my mom come and tell me that after a conversation, after, praising them for something that we had talked about fixing before, that they ended up putting a more concerted effort into working on that.
Yeah, that makes me think of like when you do something that's outside of the scope of what you would normally do, or even what you don't like doing, and you apply that, like if words of affirmation is not something that you've done before, like in your example, and that is the language that the other person has, they'll there's so many examples in this book of like doing one of those things where that person just remembers that event forever. That is actually so cool. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because like it exemplifies it. Like, I guess the way that I sort of explained this in the first part of it was, I try to do this as sort of a constant thing. So I try to make sure that like every part of my day incorporates some of my girlfriend's actual love languages. But if you do these like kind of like targeted events that are specifically for that love language and her need at that time, they'll actually remember it forever. Like they'll actually remember it forever, and it becomes this like memory in their life. There's an example in the love languages book where about receiving gifts, where Gary is at some point he decides to like travel across the entire world, just like and like looking at other cultures, and just trying to figure out where the consistencies in love languages are. And he comes across an island, I don't remember where it was, and he meets a guy who used to be a fisherman. And the fisherman, he asks if Gary wants any juice, and Gary says, "Sure, I'll have some juice." And Gary tells the guy tells his younger brother, "Go get some juice for Gary." And the younger brother like runs up a tree, like hacks down a coconut, and brings down like a coconut and says, "Juice for you." And like Gary always remembered that, right? Because that was like such a significant event for him. And then he actually says that at the end of his trip there, where he was staying with this guy, the guy gave him an old stick that was just laying on the shore for a long time, but obviously meant something to the guy. And Gary has that stick in his house and still looks back at it and says, like, well, like I remember that. I remember everything about that island through that one thing. So like, that's like to impart the significance of like one thing you can do if you think clearly enough about this.
Yeah, and a lot of these are like, I mean, really easy to do in a way. Like it's really easy to give someone a nice compliment, or just to like, I don't know, if someone's love language physical touch, you just go put your arms around them. They really take no time. Receiving gifts might be a little harder to do just because there's another aspect involved. But if you focus on taking literally 10 to 15 seconds a day to do one or two of these, I think like only positive change can happen, even if it's not necessarily someone's primary love language.
Yeah, for sure. Because everybody, I think that's really important what you just said. Like, because everybody has a need for all of these. It's just some have more needs than others. So even if like receiving gifts is not big on your list, someone gives me something that's super cool. Actually, I have gifts that I've kept that I remember for the rest of my life, even though receiving gifts is typically not very high on my list. Probably everyone here has something that someone has given you, maybe a family member or something that you keep or you hold on to because it's special to you, right? Like those are, I remember I told a story. There was this, when I was living in Korea with CLG, I was in a hotel called Everate, and attached to Everate was this convenience store, which is I guess it's pretty common in Korea. It's like you have like a little store that's like attached to a hotel, and it's like a gas station type store, but it's not a gas station. And I would go down there and I would buy something like pretty much every day, and there'd be this girl that stood behind the counter. And she's shy. I would say hi or whatever. I'd never talk. I can't talk to her. She speaks Korean. So maybe she speaks some English, but she never even tried or never like really like talked to me about it. And at the end of my trip, when I came down to the shop, she gave me a little mirror. She said, "This is for you," and she gave me this mirror, and it was like this mirror with like a green mirror with like a cat on it, and that actually like meant so much to me. Just that she would think of me in that way to give me that mirror. That was so cool. Even though receiving gifts is like not a big deal, it's really really neat that she did that. So there's all kinds of things like that and just I think the comment is like a lot of this stuff is actually not that hard to do and doesn't like cost a ton of money. Like you could spend $1 to get something that you just thought that your SO or your family would appreciate. Like how many moms out there would just appreciate a gift? You know, and like, when's the last time that you really, now that you're grown up and that, you know, you're strong, independent man who don't need no mother, like, have you really like taken a step back to like, maybe just spend a couple hours with her and like see how she's doing or give her something? Things like this make such a huge difference. And, like, doesn't have to be a big deal. Like you said, it's something that could be very small. I think if I just had like someone that said once a day, "Hey, I really appreciate you, and I think you can do it. Like you can make this happen." Like I'm a person who's always mind gaming myself, and like always telling myself why I don't think I can be successful. So if it's like someone is like, "Hey, like you've got what it takes. Like you can do it." Like, all of your aspirations are going to happen. I'm like, okay, like I can get through one more day. Sometimes that's all it takes. And like figuring out, and like the cool thing about this is you can ask a person what that is because they know it. They're thinking about it constantly. So it's like, hey, what's like, how do I do better for you? Like, how do I serve you in a way that makes you happy? Or sometimes when I'm going to bed, I think like once every couple of days, Chen and I, my girlfriend, will just ask each other like, how are you doing? Like, is the relationship going well? Well, sometimes we use the words like, it's kind of corny, but it's like, is your love tank full, right? And we'll answer. And ours is generally always full because like we're doing these things for each other. Sometimes it's not, and then we communicate that and we talk about it.
I think part of it too is identifying things that the other person is good at or they're passionate about and finding a way to create activities or time together that really let you come together as people. So as an example for myself, I never really had a good relationship with my sister growing up, and I've been trying to fix that. And she's very passionate about cooking. It's one of her main hobbies, and she loves it. And it's something as a person who wants to be healthy that I wanted to learn more about. So I've been spending time with her in the kitchen, and she's been teaching me how to make certain things, and I'll give her recipes. And it turns into not only quality time, but productive time. And we both end up having a stronger relationship because of it.
I love it.
That's really cool. Yeah,
That's
and
so
you're
cool.
learning valuable skills. I think it's cool you talk about that example, both you and Devin, because it really drives home that you can read this book and you can try to do all of this stuff for a significant other, for somebody, but unless you have real communication, unless you can talk to that person and figure out what really means the most to them. There was a question asked like, can you overfill a love tank? And I don't know if that's true, but I think a lot of times people will throw things at people, not communicating with them what they really need. So if I'm throwing a lot of gifts at somebody who doesn't need gifts but needs physical touch, it's not going to do anything. If I don't communicate with them, if they don't communicate with me, we're never going to figure that out. We're never going to improve the relationship, and you're getting nowhere. So it can feel like you're doing a lot of this and you're not getting anywhere, but in reality, you haven't even like hit the first box, which is communicating with someone about what you need and what they need, which I think you really hit in your example, Devin, where you and Jen can kind of just sit down and talk about like, oh yeah, is my love tank full? Is yours full? What do we need to do to help get there?
Yeah. I think the problem is that once problems start happening in relationships, you may want to legitimately fix it. And so you start doing things in the context of what you think is makes you happy and fulfills you. And so like you may just start spending a ton of time with that person, but that might be the actual opposite of what they need. Like what they really might need is just like words of affirmation or some acts of service or things like that. A big thing for me, for example, like for acts of service is an act of service for me is the other person in my life doing something that makes me respect them or empowers them. So when I see somebody, like when I see my SO like working out or like improving her life in some way, like and like empowering herself, that is really powerful for me, right? So when like I may respond to her in a way where it's like I just start improving myself and like doing a ton of stuff, but that might not be what she actually needs, right? So like what ends up happening is you are actually trying to fix it, and maybe you're both trying to fix it, but you're just throwing stuff at a wall and it's not sticking because the things that you're trying to do are not the things that are actually important to the other person, and both of you have not even taken the time to figure out what those things are.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny juxtaposition because quality time is not that important to you. And an act of service that shows you that somebody can develop themselves without relying on you, therefore potentially reducing, the need for the quality time is really important to you. That's an interesting.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, no, I mentioned that in chat earlier. I had an ex who had really hard times focusing on schoolwork, and if I wasn't there with her, keeping her on track and distracting her from going out and hanging out with her friends, she failed entire classes and tests, and that's pretty much what broke our relationship apart, because it was like I didn't use the word babysit, but that's what it really was. If I wasn't there babysitting her, then she just wouldn't get anything done, and that would create a spiral of negative emotions that would then spill back into the relationship.
Yep. Yeah.
I was just wondering, Devin, before when you were saying stuff about how like gifts aren't necessarily important for you, but like when you got that one gift from the girl in Korea, it was important. Do you think that it like matters that there's like a context in which all of them are at a 10, like all of these languages are at a 10 for you or anyone else really? Say you want words of affirmation, and sometimes it's like, well, a compliment's nice, but then if you keep getting complimented, it's not. And so maybe your love language for that, even though it might be your primary, sort of like diminishes because you keep getting that. That makes sense. And because like maybe you don't always want gifts, but because now that you are getting some gifts and you're like, oh my God, these are really awesome. Like maybe that becomes more important to you. Like, I don't know if I explained that well. But...
Yeah, no, it's a super good question. Like, I do think that there's I do think that like outside of the sort of like numerical value that you arbitrarily place on these 5, there's a definite like context that can make one of these things stand out to you no matter how important it normally is to you. The sort of like relationship takeaway for this is if you are throwing things at the so for example, like with Chen, maybe not all the quality time that I spend with her is equal. I mean, it definitely isn't, right? So like sitting on the couch and talking to her is not going to be the same caliber as like an all expenses paid trip to like some magical land where we spend like the weekend together, right? Like that like those are not going to be equal things. But in speaking her language with that thing on the couch, right? Like there's that talking on the couch or that direct contact or taking her out to dinner or something like that. I'm still speaking that language in a way that is growing her affection of the relationship and having me take time out of what would otherwise be not as important to me to apply to her, right? So if you can figure those things out that are going to be like the perfect 10s, that's amazing. But I don't think that it's hard for me to believe, or I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine that someone can consistently get at bat and hit those home runs all the time. So if you stay in your lane and you understand like the 2 or 3 that are really important to that person, and then you apply those, you'll just consistently be hitting so well that your relationship will be great. Then maybe occasionally doing one of those big things. Yeah. But I totally agree with you. Like in the context of all of these, in the right context, can be a life-changing event for someone.
Right, and also I think before we were talking, I think just a bit after that, there was something about how communication was like the first key. Like like all of these languages, like they have literally no bearing. Like if you can't talk to people about it, I don't think this book really addresses how if you can't talk to your partner or spouse about like these love languages. I don't think unless we aren't really up to that yet.
In a way, this whole book is about maximizing the efficiency of the love that you express. And the way that you maximize that efficiency is by first finding out what the 5 languages are, and then specifically finding out what your significant other's 5 languages are. Because everyone's going into marriage counseling. If they're doing that, it's already assumed that they're putting in work to keep the relationship, because that requires effort. The main problem that's being addressed here is that people are putting in effort, obviously, because in all the situations, they're doing something, but it's just not matching the right frequency. So what the 5 languages does, it helps you maximize the efficiency in which how you're expressing your love by maybe instead of like working extra hard to get a 3rd car, you just set aside some time every day to spend some quality time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I actually really feel like a huge sort of gap in the book is that concept, is this idea that like, what do you do if your SO isn't interested in improving the relationship and like won't respond to something like this? And like my current answer to that, so Gary's answer to that question in the book, the way that he addresses it is, well, you speak their love languages until they notice. And he actually like, I'm sure he gets this question a zillion times. Like, and so he actually like provides examples of, I remember there was this one example of like a wife who, that was the tools example. The guy's always outside working on his car. Wife just wants some time with him. Starts to speak his love languages, which I think were like acts of service. And so like starts to, and words of affirmation. I think those are the two. And basically over the course of like 3 to 6 months, or actually I think it really did take 6 months. The husband like started to notice that something was up, and she kept it up. And the husband's like, hey, like, what are you doing? Like at first, and she's like, I just want to improve the relationship. Like I want to make it better. He's like, okay. And like eventually he's like, hey, this is unfair. Like you shouldn't do this. And she's like, no, I just, I want to improve the relationship. And eventually he's like, well, is there something I could do for you? And so like it worked. Now that's cool. Coming from a 13-year relationship where I know for a fact that my ex would never ever appreciate anything like this or do anything from it, I would just tell you, like, if you're not invested yet, I would get I would get out. And I would probably not deal with it if I met a girl and they didn't have. So what I mean by that is like, not memeing, but like if they didn't have a impetus of force forward for improving, if I couldn't sit down with them and say, hey, is improving in your life actively important to you? And they're gonna say yes, but and in their actions, the actions they actually take, right? Because people are not defined by their words; they're defined by their actions. What are they actually doing, right? If they don't want to improve that, I just peace out, man. Like I think it's such an uphill effort to try to work with someone who isn't interested in really improving. But that's my opinion. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's totally fine for relationships to end. You learn a lot about yourself, and you learn about, things you could have done better, things you might need in a relationship. I think you grow a lot as a person. So it's fine for relationships to end.
I think touching upon wanting to put the effort in, specifically, this is a quote that actually got me really paying attention to the book, because I think we said earlier, right, the guy, there's very male gendered overtones and very Christian values that are kind of in the book, and it was really easy to dismiss until I got to this line, because it's something that I've been thinking for a long time, and him saying this reaffirmed it in such a great way. It's essentially the line where he goes, that kind of love requires effort and discipline. It's the choice to expend energy in an effort to benefit the other person. Him recognizing that it was when he was putting the delineation between being in love and loving someone every day. I think to find someone who's unwilling to put in that effort is such a sign to bug out of that relationship.
Yeah.
And like moving forward, I can't imagine being in a relationship with someone who doesn't want to work on that relationship with me.
Well said.
It's such a foreign concept.
Super well said. Yeah. I mean, I
just
so
personally,
completely agree.
one of the quotes that one of the most important quotes that I think I found was like, it was repeated quite a bit. I think in most of them was like this idea of like love makes requests, not demands. So it's like more like encouraging people and like asking them instead of just being like, hey, do this, I guess. I don't know.
I think that has to do with language too, because I found this from someone that I was dating, that there was one conversation they had where they examined the way that I was speaking, and they pointed out that I used a lot of harsh words like always or never or don't frequently, and that it would shut off their responsiveness to the conversation. So I adapted my language accordingly, and eliminated most of those words and made sure to use positive affirmation rather than a negative spun criticism. And we're not seeing each other anymore, but I was able to reestablish that relationship recently, and it got off to a great bat immediately because they were able to just hear the way that it had changed.
Yeah, that's a super important and good example of communication matters, because you certainly, I'm sure, didn't mean the harsh language as it sounded, but without having that communication, you wouldn't have known that. It's something, I think, if you ever take like a course in communication or management, I think something you learn is never to assume the worst from people and their intentions. You kind of should always assume that even if they're saying something that sounds bad, even if they're doing something that might not reflect great on them, unless it's just an awful thing, you should assume better of them and start there. Because if you start from a place of hostility and you start from a place of thinking that they're doing something to hurt you, it's only going to be negative.
Yeah, that it had actually started from something, Devin, that I saw you doing with Destiny, where you guys were at a Denny's. I think you had been talking about employment and the language that you use. And I can't remember if it was you or him who mentioned cutting the word out of a sentence and just interspacing it with a pause to give yourself time to think. And that mindset made me focus more on other things that I was using in language as well.
That's cool. Yeah. I had a lot of speech impediments before I started streaming, and I tried to become more conscious of them. Like another one, I still have a lot of them. When I start talking fast, I get super excited. Then I like is one of them. Is one of them. Like is probably really bad. Some people give me trash for that. It's fine. I haven't actually announced this, but I started trying to not curse as much. Some days I'm better at it than others. And I also had I had all kinds of weird stuff going on before. But yeah, the point is your words and your actions have these sort of unintended consequences that sometimes are good and sometimes aren't. But if you focus on doing a few things out of this list that are objectively positive, you're gonna create a positive result, right? Like you're never gonna get a negative result by giving someone a genuine compliment that you thought hard about to give to them, and you're never gonna get a negative result by giving somebody a gift or something that you saw that made you think of them. And I think Ronan said in chat, or Ronian, I think it's Ronian, said, this is really a book about maximizing the efficiency of love and relationships. And that sounds kind of binary when you think about it, because it's like, well, haven't we been taught that love is this thing that's just supposed to hit and connect? And it sort of feels like everybody is kind of out there looking for the one who is just going to perfectly meet their needs. And there's this trap that everybody falls into. And Gary talks about this in the book a lot, where it's like you meet a girl, you're crazy about them, they're crazy about you, then the honeymoon phase fades off, you're both unhappy, you break up, you deal with all the emotional stress of that, and it becomes this scar on your life. and then you move on to the next one. And now you've met the next one. You think this is the one, and he tells all these stories of these people that are on marriage number 3, 4, or whatever. These are all people that are looking for that one love, and it's not gonna come. It's why I think, going back to, actually, if I had to say one thing, which is like why it's so important that your SO is legitimately invested in improving the relationship, not just telling you they are, but taking action to do it, is because it almost doesn't even matter who you're with, like, as long as they have that concept. Because if you're both trying to improve, then it's gonna be fine, probably. Like, if you're both trying to make a difference, it's gonna be fine, and you're gonna be happy. Love isn't this thing that just ever connects, and any like long-term therapist or person who's dealt with like marriage counseling or will tell you that they've never seen a situation where like two people like hit it. And I can't ever think of anybody I've ever met that is in some kind of like perfect relationship where they haven't worked on it. Yeah.
I think part of that too is introducing newness. There's a scholar that I really like by the name of Manuel de Landa who does a lot of studying. He's a social ontologist and he studies relationships on different levels, things like assemblages. But one of the things that he talks about is the routines that humans get themselves into. And he warns of Nietzsche's quote of being human, all too human, and how we'll kind of get stuck into our own routines and interests. And that sometimes to salvage relationships like that, you need to focus on, you can have routine, you can have interests and passions that you're focusing on constantly, but you want to be introducing newness into everything, a little bit of chaos. So that way you're constantly keeping your brain and your relationships with other people active and changing.
Yeah, totally. I think like I'm actually like I'm pretty amped right now because I think like a lot more people are understanding the concept of this book than I thought they would. I thought that everybody would think this was a meme, but it's actually going really well. Amish says, want to thank you for addressing this topic. The discussion has been helpful and is thanking me for the relationship in the way I need to. Glad I stumbled on your channel. Thank you so much, man. Thank you, Retro. Appreciate that. Your entire values are based on growth and personal development. It's important for couples' values to align. Another couple may not have the values of personal development, but share values in other areas that make them compatible. That is possible. I would say that if two people are not interested in improving on themselves at all, and they enter tough times, it's hard for me to believe that they will weather those as well as two people that are interested in self-improving. But perhaps that's a fair point. Although outside of the context of like what if it matters or not, yeah.
Have you also talked about dialects? Only about like the part about the language of the different dialects. Has that been? I came in late, so I apologize. Has that been brought up?
Sorry.
The part about different dialects, how we can all have different dialects.
Yeah, we've covered that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was going to apply to this part, but never mind. Sorry, I came in late.
No, it's cool, man. I'm glad you're here.
One thing about the growth, even if the other person, SO, isn't focused on like expanding on growing the relationship, if they're in love with you and you did go as far as to get married, even, they should be willing to at least. Oh, shit, I'm thinking. They should be willing to sacrifice a bit. That's what relationships are often all about. So what this does is that everyone's willing to sacrifice to a certain extent, some to much more than others. And I think sacrifice in a way that's more meaningful for the other person, even if you don't care so much about growing the relationship.
The guy that sounds like he's in a wizard battle is right. I think like the point is like you don't you don't have to. When I say like a person needs to be like totally, that I guess that's like my personal ideal, right? Like a person that's like totally that's focused on self-improvement, and they'd be like totally focused on that. But if you love the other person and you can sit down and say, hey, these are my needs, and this is something that is this something that we can do together, and then what are your needs, and that's something that I can do for you. If you can have that conversation, relationship is thumbs up. It doesn't need to be a person who's like completely obsessed with like improving themselves. That's my like Goku-esque value that I put on everything. But yeah, I'm just saying like a relationship where you have that open communication where you can sit down and say like, look, how do I serve you better and how do you serve me better? And then have those things actually translate into action. That is something that I think is like a core value of a successful relationship.
In regards to people, relationships, you get better, blah, 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 especially if you're thinking about getting married. Obviously, that's super ideal, but I think that's one of the biggest issues with the kind of honeymoon, super in love phase is that, it feels so new and everything is awesome. And you do feel like you're trying to make it better all the time, but it's almost like a New Year's resolution where for the first couple months, yeah, I'm all about this. I'm doing it. I'm getting better. And then slowly those little quirks become annoyances and you're not willing to do the little things to make the relationship better. And you've already decided to get married, so it's too late. I think that's where it really falls apart. It's not necessarily that people aren't willing to put in the work to make relationships better. It's just that they're not very conscious of it, and it feels like they've already done that. They don't realize it's kind of a constant battle.
Yeah, super good point. That like, if there's anything I've ever learned from long-term relationships, is that it's like just like life too, right? It's like so well said. We're going back to David Goggins here, which is like the January book club, which is like, you don't wake up one day and it's like both love tanks are full, everything is good, everybody is happy. The love tank is a fuel tank, basically. It's a thing that decreases with time when left alone, and so. Just like anything that's worth doing in life, it is a constant effort to attain a state of equilibrium that is like favorable to both people, or better said, you got to work to be happy. You have to like both at your life and at your relationship, and understanding that going in. Actually, just having that's such a good point. Having that just mindset alone about a relationship is so much more productive than like, okay, there's a place where love is. This is the place where love is. It's at this spot. It's at this state. It's at this mindset. It's at this time. Versus love is a constant thing that we can always have and generate as long as we are understanding each other's needs and serving them.
You need to callous your love tank.
Yeah, and just constantly try to be aware of your SO's love tank, your family's love tank, and try to grow it. I mean, it sounds so cheesy to put in these terms, but I think it's like one thing that like everybody can understand.
I think too.
It's kind of like in the book, he talked about this one couple that were having a bad relationship, and the husband just did everything in 1 week. He gave a gift every single day, and then the wife was wondering what was happening, like why he was acting almost crazy. And then they talked about it, and he's just like, I realized after talking to Gary that I haven't given you gifts for the past like 3 years. So he tried to make it up all at once, and they had to talk it out, and they talked it out, and he decided, or they decided together, that he would give a gift once a week. Instead of trying to fix everything all at once, they had to fix it over time.
I think that's where curiosity comes in, because when you see things in a relationship changing, and it's like from when you first started to where you are now, then being curious about what's taking place. And so for him, if you could have, it sounded like from that story, I think then it was where he went to, they learned that from going to the conference, right? But if we're not at a conference, then and we're with our SO, then we can ask, or we can just kind of be curious about what's different about what I'm doing now compared to what I was doing then, if they're not sure either, and have that conversation. Because if we don't know that stuff, then there's no way that we can apply what it is that we're learning.
I feel like a lot of these conversations are kind of leading back to like communication is key in the end, I think.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
there's a difference of talking though, like just to say like this is what I need, and then being curious, because that's where we're trying to pull from the other person, and it's about them. Because if it's not, then it can be about us and what we need. And when we're curious, then it's about what they need, and that gives us a much better like context of what it is that will help us in that moment. It won't just give us what we think we want to hear, and then we won't get as frustrated either, because we're often trying to let that person know. So like the type of communication is really important.
Yeah, communication is not just a thing, it's a framework, right? Like what five love languages is if it could be summarized into anything, it's a framework for better communication with your closest relationships. So it's not, communication is what's important, but I think the whole point of the five love languages is if you're communicating in a language that the other person doesn't understand, you're not going to make much progress. Whereas if you're communicating in the language that they do understand, and you're operating under this sort of like procedure that this framework gives you to be able to better serve them, you're going to get a lot farther, a lot faster. And so, yeah, it does come down to communication, but how do you communicate is the purpose of this book.
Especially,
I think part of it,
especially if like you're looking for something, like right now, if someone's trying to find this book to figure out how to connect with their significant other, then they're probably already angry or hurt or fill in the blank. And so like it's hard to be able to want to get to that space when you're in a spot where you're already pissed off because they've done something or haven't done something. And so that's why I think, like the type of communication is really important. And we often, when we're hurt and angry, try to do things to make ourselves feel better. Excuse me. And so that's where the difficulty in the communication can come from, because that can get in the way.
Part of it too is once you've identified your own languages, I think finding ways to fulfill those independently without relying on another person too is really helpful as well. Because if you're able to regularly and singularly, not saying that you should be entirely self-sufficient, but knowing how to fulfill those needs on your own through some of your own actions or things that you're going out and looking for will then set the standard or a higher bar for what you expect from other people. Not in a negative way, I would think, but where when someone does fulfill that, it definitely feels more special because it's coming from a place that you can't do yourself, even though you're really working on it. So it seems that much, or it seems like it's set to a higher standard than you would have expected normally.
Yeah, that is such an important point, actually. And it's actually funny enough, that's something I got from Destiny's stream. Like some years ago, he talked about the importance of being able to kind of be self-sustaining. Your happiness and how you live should not rely on someone else, because as soon as that thing is gone or that person is gone, your happiness is gone. You should have hobbies. You should have something that drives you and that makes you happy. That isn't something that can just be taken away or disappear.
You can't love anyone else without loving yourself first, right?
Yeah, there we go.
And your relationship will get stronger because you actually have those values too.
Yeah, you have more to bring to the table, and
Yeah.
it's not just you doing stuff together. It's like you could spend like a month apart and you come back and there's conversation because you just haven't been doing nothing without the other person.
Yeah. And in general, I think holding on to your own hobbies and developing those outside of the context of a relationship is a really positive thing. Also, including one of the things I go to yoga pretty early in the morning, and I've recently stopped doing this, which has been kind of like really bad because I'm trying to stream earlier. So my goal is to like run my stream around like 7 a.m. actually, so like 2 hours before it normally starts. At 6 a.m., my girlfriend and I were going to yoga together, and so hot yoga. I love hot yoga. It's like it's awesome. But my girlfriend like wanted to do that as like a part of a way of like spending time with me and also like getting something that's valuable to me, and at the same time also serving the need of like, okay, like is my girlfriend improving herself? Is she growing as a person? And like managed to like do all those things. It was like an extremely positive thing for me while she was doing that. So you can like oftentimes your SO, like the best SOs will want to involve themselves in those activities when they see hobbies and things that you're doing. They'll want to involve themselves in those and make those a part of their life too. And your relationship will get even better because you have those hobbies.
One of the best popular examples of this I've seen is actually a really cute podcast that Griffin McElroy and his wife Rachel do called Wonderful, where every week they pick a handful of topics. It doesn't matter whether it's something really small, like walking around your hometown, or a song that you like, and then they do deep dives on the history or the feeling of the thing, and the whole podcast is them talking about those different subjects and why they love them with each other. And you can hear how good the communication is there and the excitement it builds. And that's something that I've tried to apply to other relationships, and it ends up being really fun because you learn more about the things that you love, and the people that you're talking to understand more about them as well.
For sure. Yeah, 100%.
And if we want to take this back to Marie Kondo's book, what we're really doing is we're taking our chunks of time and we're throwing away the chunks of time that don't bring us joy and bringing back the chunks of time that do bring us joy by giving joy to our SO, which in turn gives joy to ourselves.
Damn, look at Cooks here, bringing it back to book 1.
Yeah, the full circle, man. Well, all right. Anybody have any other like comments or closing statements or questions or anything?
So far, really enjoying the book. I think it's really good. I think it's useful. I think a lot of people dismissed it in the beginning, but
Yeah.
I think everybody's realizing that it's really important.
That's really cool. I can't tell you how happy I am that you guys wanted to read this and that you're also like getting so much out of it. And I mean, this is one of those things where it's like, okay, you know, it's the 18th and it's Monday, it's 10 a.m. I'm gonna be alone in this Discord chat because like I mean nobody would be like interested in it. But not only that, but like you have all been getting as much, if not more, than me out of this book. It's really cool.
This book has been on my radar for a while. Oh, sorry. I like take the r/relationship subreddit kind of seriously in giving advice, so I'm there a lot, and this book gets recommended there a lot. So it's been on my to read list for a long time. And so when you mentioned it, I actually didn't believe that like we were talking about the same book until I picked it up, and we were reading through it. It exceeded my expectations for it, so I've been really happy to read through it, and I expect to finish it within the next couple of days because I just haven't been able to put it down. But I think its value is reaffirming a lot of the things that I've already been thinking about in reviewing my past relationships, so I've been really appreciative for what the book has had to say.
That is great to hear.
Yeah, and for some reason, I took all 5 reasons, all 5 languages, and put them on my Tinder page, but my phone isn't blowing up. So this is a pseudo sign.
Well, when it does, I think you'll get the right person, probably. Or you'll get, if you're just looking for hookups, you'll get a really long-term relationship instead. I don't know if that's what you want. Yeah, it's gonna be someone that's super interested in a long-term relationship. I like the thing is, so there is a corollary to dating here, and it's like understanding the needs of the girls that you're immediately meeting, and being able to identify that. I don't want to go too far into like pickup artist territory. We're gonna go super seducer here, but it does like make a huge difference in dating. I'd imagine, like understanding those needs and addressing them is gonna make people crazy about you. So it does have a lot of dating applications too.
Yeah, and I think the last thing, Devin, we really appreciate you. You're doing great.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks, dude. I'm trying. And yeah, I appreciate all of you guys for putting up with my nonsense in terms of these book clubs. So I'll keep it up. I'm heavily researching the March book right now. It's hard, but there's so many I want to do, but it has to be something that's just like beyond amazing. And I'm not gonna meme you guys again. We're gonna go for like a hardcore self-improvement book. So we'll see.
I mean, jokes aside about it, I think it is legitimately really cool that out of all the books you read, you curate this book club. You make sure you read it before you recommend it, and that lets us not have to worry about whether or not it's worth reading. It's just what we take out of it, and I think that value shouldn't be understated.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out which books are really good, like not just like okay, this is like, yeah, I get it. Or like any of those books that are kind of the traps that it's like, oh yeah, here's like the one concept that I have in my book, and if you read that, then you don't need the other 235 pages. Like just like, and it's like, okay, like I'm trying to avoid that super hard. It's got to be something that like even one book that's like in the running for the March one, and it might still be, but I don't think it will be, is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. And like that book is super duper good, but even that I might think like has like just like too few takeaways to like really like apply. The wizard battle. Cuxier.
Got some background noise there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was muted.
It's okay. Yeah.
Your fault. It's like 1 p.m. on a Monday. I mean,
Yeah, I guess you gotta battle some wizards at 1 p.m. on a Monday. That makes sense. Like, it's okay. All right, this is a really good discussion. I think also if you have recommendations for March books, you can also email me, and I'll give them a listen. And usually what I do is I use an app called Blinkist, and I'll get like a 15-minute summary of it. If it sounds like it's really, really good, then I will read the whole thing and vet the whole thing on audio or Kindle before I recommend it. So I've already finished 5 Love Languages, so I have about 20 days to probably look through like 3 or 4 books max.
So obviously, since your obvious Audible discussed before, no pickup artist books.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think that's like it's so one of the like values of the book club is it really has to be like broad spectrum applicable to everything, right? And it has to have objective takeaways from that. So it's like no matter who you are, like okay, like I could definitely recommend something by like is it Neil Strauss that does those, like something like that? And those are like legitimately great books, like within the context of like someone that's like interested in that thing. But then like what about my like 25-year-old girl in the audience who's like like interested in like X, Y, and Z or whatever, right? Like does that apply across the board to her? And like so that's like what I'm looking for is like anybody can sit down with this and it would drastically improve their life to read the book.
Yeah, that's why I recommended that social theory book, because I think that's something that people overlook in building relationship with other people, is seeing how external forces, not just what's going on between the two of you, affects that as well. And the more consciousness you take into those things, the less kind of fighting and more cooperation that takes place within those relationships. And you end up getting people holding hands to move forward together rather than fighting over things that are completely out of their control.
Yep. Yeah, well said. You could email me recommendations at mylixiatv@gmail.com if you want. Can I email you if I'm lonely instead? Yeah, sure, buddy. Wow. Effective Executive by Drucker is a pretty excellent book. Yep, it's a really good book. So is High Output Management. There's a lot of like really good, but again, like it's got to apply to everybody. Not everybody wants to be an effective executive. It's a lot of work to do. Okay. Sounds good, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming out for this. We'll do a follow-up discussion on this. Definitely encourage you guys to finish the book. Then the next one will be the 30th, 28th. What's our schedule? Yee is our bookmaster.
It should be 28.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so it's the end of February, and then we'll announce the book for March on the 27th or 26th or so. As of yet, I have not figured it out which one is going to be. There's some in the running. There is Extreme Ownership, like I said, by Jocko Willink. 10% Happier by Dan Harris is also on that list. There's a couple there's another one by Aubrey Marcus that's on the list. So there's a bunch of stuff that might be cool, and we'll see what that is going to be. But for now, 5 Love Languages is the book of choice, and I'm so grateful that everybody has been getting a lot out of it and that you guys are enjoying it. If you haven't read this book, I can so strongly encourage you to do it. It is really a life-changing book on so many levels for not only your significant other, but also your closest relationships. Thank you guys for giving it a chance.
Thanks for hosting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody being here.
Yeah. Till next time. See you guys on the 28th.
See ya.
Cool. So this book is really neat. That'll close out that. I will have that highlighted for you, and it might actually. Some people have been posting videos of the stream on YouTube, which is great. And what I will probably do is reach out to one of those people and be like, hey, do you want to do this in a more official capacity where I'd pay you to do it? And then that'll go on the YouTube. The reason why I'm waiting on YouTube videos, you'll see that I have a bunch of highlights on my channel right now, but I don't have, they're not going up onto YouTube, is because my channel may be pending a name change, which a few people know about. So I can't really do anything about that until I know what's happening there. January book was Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. Give an additional shout to Oxton on Melody in Discord. Looks like they're one doing a lot of video posting. Yes, they are. Yes, Xver has done one as well. And I've gotten a couple of people who have been doing videos. So I'm definitely going to reach out to those people and talk to them. It's super, super cool. They want to do that. God, that was so cool. There's so many people that came out for the book club. I'm so excited. That is really cool that everybody got an effort, and there's a bunch of cool comments in chat. I'm so glad that people looked past this book. I'm so proud of this community. Looked past this book and like for the me. There wasn't a single comment about the memes. Like there wasn't a single one that was like, yeah, this is like ridiculous or whatever. We even like with Can't Hurt Me with David Goggins, we even got that. And I think Can't Hurt Me was like a much more straightforward book. So you guys being able to see through the fog and to see what the actual value of this book is, super good. Thank you very much for doing that. It's really good. Okay. Any other questions or anything like that? Otherwise, I'm going to transition to auto chess after a break, but let's see. Link to the image? Yeah, for sure. I got you, Jack. Doing any custom lobbies? Nah, I'm climbing. Sent you my book recommendation. Thanks, dude. I shall look at it. Cool. Okay, we're good. I'm going to take a small break, get some more tea, get some more water. And and also just like allow for a break in the stream so that we can change gears because we're going to be gaming now. We're going to be gaming for this President's Day. I'm celebrating my holiday by playing some auto chess, and I got to respond to some texts and other stuff like that. I'm on till 2 today, I think. My first meeting is 2 or 3. We'll see. And one of the other things I'm trying to do is I really, really am trying to get this stream to be earlier. So I'm very much going to be setting a goal to trying to get the stream to 7, starting at 7 every morning. That'd be really good if I could do that. Get a couple extra hours on the stream, and me just getting up earlier would just be better in general. Cool. Okay. So actually, I'm not sure if we're meeting today at all, so I might have a longer stream. We'll see. Okay. That's it. I'm going to take a break, and I will see you guys again in a minute. Thank you so much for coming out for 5 Love Languages, and I'm really looking forward to the follow-up of this discussion on February 28th. ! Book Club in chat. It's really easy to get into the book club. You can sign up, and you can go to the leaderboards. The leaderboards that Yi in our chat has awesomely set up. Not only do you have your own form, but you also can see everybody that's in the book club that's been reading the book, the reason why they're reading it, and you can put yourself in this too. And write it down, sign up for the Google form, and then read the book. And then you can come back and you can say, oh, I read it, and it's great. Some people just want to know what love is. Some people think reading is good. And some people think that the book club just rocks, enjoy self-improvement. So these are the people that are committed, and these live forever in our community. So you have the option to join the book club and read it. Please do.
Walk, little walk, small talk, big thoughts. Gonna tell them all just what I want. That street to streets. I see you and me hanging on the empty swings.